Hi again. I hope you've learned a lot about your inner critic so far. I hope you've been able to get some answers as to how your inner critic came about and how was it made. So then, what now? This is when you come to the crossroads and decide, what are you going to do with your inner critic? When you first started this class, what did you want to do with your inner critic? Reflect on that. What do you want to do now? Is it different than when you first started? Many people, they want to do two things. They want to either silence it or they want to change its story. For the people who want to silence it, it's okay. Our inner critic voice is toxic very many times. However, there are times when our inner voice is looking to protect us. For me, I had an inner critic voice in me every time I drove. I would sweat like crazy when I drove, especially when I went on a highway. I would be shaking while I was on the steering wheel. I would be sweating so bad. I was breathing really heavily. I was just a complete mess every time that I went on the road, especially on the highway. And the reason is I would remember a family member's voice that would criticize me a lot when I was learning how to drive. I had this driving anxiety for years, more than a decade. Then just last year in 2020, of all years, I decided to make a change. I realized that the family member that had created this inner critic voice in me was just trying to protect me and didn't want to see me get hurt and didn't want to ever see me get into a car accident. She was hard on herself, so then she was hard on me when I began to drive. That inner critic voice I had in me for a long time was toxic because it gave me anxiety and it also just made me so overwhelmed. But what I realized is that voice also tried to protect me. Now I've learned to filter out that voice. When I hear it, I take a deep breath, calm myself down, focus on the road and say, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. Or I begin to say a prayer, Lord God, please protect me. I want to acknowledge that everyone's inner critic voice can be different. It's different for everybody, but you're gonna have to decide what your inner critic is. Is it your friend or is it your foe? Go to your handout and underline the inner critics that you find in you. And this time, try to check off if you find that your inner critic voice is toxic or protective. Pause the video so that you can go and do that. Welcome back. How does knowing the voice being protective make you feel? Does it make you feel any different? My inner critic voice was a foe to my anxiety, but it was a friend wanting to protect me. I took the fact that it wanted to protect me, but I replaced it with another voice. For me, it helped to silence the voice by using my comforting affirmations and prayer over it. Here are 4 steps that you can take to unfriend that inner critic in you. Awareness, question, decide, replace. Step 1 is to simply become aware of that inner critic voice that is speaking to you. When is it telling you that you're ugly? Is it when you're comparing yourself to others? When does it tell you that you're guilty? Is it when you say no to someone who has asked you for help, even though you are at your wit's end and you're so tired and they take advantage of you? When does the voice tell you to work harder? Is it when you want to take a rest and not want to appear lazy? When is it? Try to figure out when that voice comes in and be aware of it. Catch it. Say, ha, I got you. Step 2 is to question the voice. Is that voice being my friend or my foe right now? Is it being toxic or is it being protective? If it's being toxic, it's going to lead to feelings of anxiety and depression and worthlessness. If it's protecting you, it'll probably do the job of protecting you. Step 3 is to decide, are you going to continue believing the voice, or are you going to try to silence the voice or change its story? This step is key to making changes in your life. It is this step that is going to decide if you keep that voice or rewire it. This is where your healthy coping mechanisms come in. This is where your self-care comes in. If the voice in you is toxic, it doesn't allow you to take care of you. But this is where you decide, I'm going to breathe, calm down, and choose the truth. Last but not least, step 4 is to replace. In this stage, you will either change the story of the inner critic voice, like I did with the voice that gave me anxiety while driving, or will you silence that voice? If you choose to silence it, then you're going to need some positive truths to replace those toxic thoughts with. If you choose to change its story, then you can dig a little deeper to understand that voice. That's what I chose because that's what was right for me. For you, it might look very different. You might not want to look back to what made that voice get there, and maybe you don't want to understand it better. That is okay. Just focus then on replacing the old voice with a new voice that is calming and affirming. Take the time to think about what healthy coping you have that you can practice in this third stage. And what affirming truths already exist in you to replace the inner critic in you. Take that time to do that in your handout now. In our next video, we'll help you to create some new affirming truths about you. It's going to be awesome. Hope you enjoy it. See you then.